Well, here we go. We gotta start diving into one of, if not the worst phase in the MCU. And while we are skipping its two worst projects, Miss Marvel and She-Hulk, because I refuse to review those until that tier list video for the sake of my sanity, there's still some pretty underwhelming bad projects that we have to get through. Now, there are some upsides here, because even though we can't review No Way Home, because we already did in a giant 1-hour behemoth, well, we can still review some good things. We get to review Loki, we get to review Moon Knight, and I finally get to check out Shang-Chi for the first time, so there might be some upsides here, but just don't be surprised if some of these reviews from here on out get a little intensely negative. But keep in mind, it's nothing more than my own opinion. If these are projects that you love, all the more power to you. They are just not for me. Not most of them, anyway. So, why don't we go ahead and get started with Marvel's first dive into television. Well, the MCU's first dive into television, because, I'm not going to get into that. But the point is, this is when the MCU decided to try and expand outside of just movies, and with the help of the newly created Disney Plus subscription service, which I think is a piece of absolute crap for numerous reasons, they decided to try and expand the MCU in more ways. And most of the effects of that are rushed out, boring, tedious slogs. But I do give them credit for at least trying to mix things up a little. But unfortunately, this just seems like one part of the MCU that the MCU refuses to let go of, no matter how many of these things fail. So, okay. So, I'm just going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible and as quick as possible. That way we don't have to spend much time on it. Sound fair? Alright, here we go. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mr. Station, Mr. For anything and everything Mission, including Marvel heroes uniting for the fate of the world, as well as TV and movies. I'm your host, Jen Small. Welcome back to Marvelous May. This is my review of the MCU's first escapade into television with WandaVision. Now, here's the thing. This show's not bad. Let me make that clear right now. This show is not bad. It has some unique things about it. They try to play around with styles, and the first few episodes are really good. It does have its moments of genuinely smart, clever writing, and some surprisingly funny self-parody. As it, makes homages to all these different kinds of TV shows, and the way that it all bends reality around. It's interesting. And I can see why Marvel thought it was too big of a thing to make into a movie. So they made it a show. So because of that, I can see what they were going for. But the problem is, once you get to the second half of the show, it all dives off a cliff. By a pretty steep margin, as a matter of fact. From another terrible villain, to a bunch of things that make no sense, to some really, really poor writing, this show just absolutely falls on its face when it comes to the second half and explaining everything. So, here's my written review. Enjoy. Following the events of Endgame, it was clear that the MCU had to start branching out to stay relevant and keep things fresh. So with the help of the newly created Disney Plus, it began its first ever television series. To mixed results. WandaVision starts out promising its first half with some great character moments, an intriguing, unpredictable plot, and really solid acting from the leads. Not to mention, like I said, a lot of change in style and some surprisingly clever self-parody. But unfortunately, it sputters out by the end due to weak writing, too many plot lines, a very underwhelming finale, and a garbage villain that is among the MCU's absolute worst. I'm not reviewing Agatha either, because She sucked in this show, and more than likely she sucks on her own show. So, save it for the tier list. It has ambition, and it does have some good ideas. Not to mention, you do get to see Scarlet Witch and Vision in the classic comic costumes, which is cool. That's a nice novelty. But it's just too convoluted, and it's all around messy to watch more than once. It is a decent first try at television, but it's not very memorable. It's average and nothing more. It starts out super promising, and then once you get to the second half, it all falls immediately on its face. Which you're going to hear me say a lot with all these Phase 4 reviews, because it ends up becoming a pattern. So, with all that said, final verdict for WandaVision, solid, average, 5 out of 10. Some people really like it, some people really don't like it. I'm kind of in the middle. Love the first half of it, but once you get to the explanation and how it all actually explains what's going on, it falls flat on its face and takes an immediate nosedive. Sorry. But hey, it's not as bad as what they followed it up with, when I actually had hope for, that they actually immediately threw down the toilet. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time for the underwhelming bore fest that is Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Excited for what comes up ahead. Hey,